Are you ready to escape the mind trap of imposter syndrome? Because, let me tell you, I just finished reading this amazing book called The Imposter Cure by Dr. Jessamy Hibberd, and it's packed with valuable insights and wisdom that I can't wait to share with you. In this video, I'm going to be sharing some of the strategies I learned for increasing confidence, overcoming fears and doubts, and learning to see ourselves through the eyes of others. Trust me, this book is a game changer and you don't want to miss it. Introduction. Our driver here. He's feeling his heart pounding as he enters this perplexing and perilous territory. He's driven this road a million times, but with the fog, he has no idea what lies ahead. It's eerily quiet, except for the thoughts racing in his mind. He feels compelled to keep going, but all he wants to do is pull over. But, just as he's about to give in, he yelps and slams on the brakes to avoid hitting the car in front. He releases a breath he didn't even realize he was holding and glances back at his passenger. "Wow," she says, "you're amazing. I thought we were gonna die." Our driver just shakes his head and smiles, convinced it was just luck. But, just like that, the fog starts to lift and he drives on, relief washing over him. Now, this is where it gets interesting. See, imposter syndrome can be just as disorienting. It's this self-doubt that can make it tough for someone with the syndrome to recognize their own skills and accomplishments. Instead, they focus on their flaws and shortcomings, and it can paralyze you, stop you from living life to the fullest. But, just like driving in the fog, imposter syndrome is something you can learn to navigate. We're going to look at the causes of imposter syndrome and discover coping strategies to beat it. By building a body of evidence and keeping track of your progress, you'll find your own imposter cure and learn how to overcome any obstacles to your future happiness. So, let's turn off the cruise control and head into uncharted territory. Are you ready? Let's go. Idea number 1. Have you ever felt like a total fraud? Like, you just got a promotion at work but you're worried you won't live up to expectations, or you're in college and finding it hard to keep up with your peers? Well, if you can relate to any of that, you might be experiencing something called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is that feeling you get when your beliefs and expectations collide. For example, people with the syndrome feel a huge amount of shame when they don't achieve their goals, which leads to guilt, self-doubt, and poor performance. And, get this, research by Dr. Valerie Young, an expert on the syndrome and co-founder of the Imposter Syndrome Institute, shows that people with the syndrome present with one of 5 character traits. Perfectionists, for example, have super high standards and feel filled with self-doubt when things aren't perfect. They're afraid of failure, but since perfection is impossible, these feelings create a never-ending cycle of hard work and dissatisfaction. Then there are the natural geniuses, who focus on how and when things are done, and feel like fakes when they can't do something right away. They learn new things quickly but lack perseverance. Soloists believe a goal is only worth pursuing if they can achieve it alone, so they don't ask for help, even when a project is going wrong. When they encounter troubles, they put things off so they don't have to admit defeat. Experts are knowledge perfectionists. They believe competence means knowing everything and won't consider a job if they don't meet all the requirements. They worry about seeming inexperienced or uninformed. And last but not least, superwomen and supermen have unreal expectations and, like perfectionists, they believe it's all or nothing. They define competence as flawless performance in any role or situation. Did you recognize yourself in any of these types? If you did, you may have imposter syndrome too. But here's the thing. There's no single cure for imposter syndrome, but understanding how it manifests is an ideal place to start. Idea number 2. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. Anything that suggests achievement or approval can cause it. But here's the thing. Why is it that some people experience unease in these situations while others don't? Well, It all depends on how you interpret your discomfort. You see, when someone with imposter syndrome feels discomfort, they accept it as a sign of being a fake. They believe they're not good enough or unprepared for the challenge. But, when someone with imposter syndrome succeeds, they feel like they must have tricked their way in, just like our girl Poppy. Poppy, for example, signed a book deal with her dream publisher, but then fear set in. What could she write? How many books would she sell? After all, unread books have no value. She misinterpreted her fear right from the start as it took hold of her, and it shifted her perspective. Every time she won, she moved the goalposts. Even when her first book was a success, she began the second book feeling exactly the same way. Imposter syndrome isn't always obvious. Emotions can distort your reasoning, causing you to ignore feelings that might suggest something else. Regardless of how many projects you complete successfully, your self-perception can remain flawed. But, here's the good news. Recognizing your thoughts aren't always right is a big step in overcoming imposter syndrome. Once you're able to recognize that, you can start to call the rest of your negative beliefs into question. Don't worry, it's a lot easier than you think. Grab a pen and paper or notebook, and make a list of everything you've ever accomplished, no matter how big or small. Then ask yourself what other people would think of a person who'd achieved all the things on your list. Use this as evidence that your theory of being an imposter is false. Then, when the next negative thought enters your mind, you'll know it's a feeling, not a fact. Keep your list up to date to identify and correct your confirmation bias. This technique will quickly help you dispel the false beliefs you have about yourself. So, give it a try. You got this. Idea number 3. Have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? It's that feeling where you feel like a fraud and like you're not really qualified for the job or position you're in. And let me tell you, it's a real bummer. But here's the thing. People with imposter syndrome often develop coping mechanisms to deal with the stress. But here's the catch. These actions may help in the short term, but if you aren't fake, these behaviors are part of the problem. For example, let's take William. He's a lawyer who just got promoted and now has more responsibilities than he ever imagined. He starts to feel like he's not doing enough, and his eczema flares up from the stress. Instead of admitting that the workload is the issue, he keeps it to himself, thinking that if he just works more hours, he'll be able to keep up. But you know what happens? He starts working or sleeping on weekends too, instead of relaxing or spending time with his family. Now, whether you're a Superman or a soloist, you need to learn to manage your tendencies or else you'll be exploited. Work isn't everything, and you need to be determined, persistent, and eager to learn. And most importantly, you need to rethink your definition of success. What kind of person do you want to be? It's important to check in with yourself every so often and see how you're doing. Are your imposter coping mechanisms still working? Are you sacrificing your health or relationships for the sake of your job? What would it be like to have some boundaries? Trust me, it's worth thinking about. Idea number 4. Let's talk about inner voices, shall we? Sometimes, it can be super hard to be your own cheerleader, am I right? Your inner voice can be so harsh and critical, it's like it's out to get you. And the worst part is, you might not even realize it. But here's the thing, that kind of self-criticism can hold you back big time. Think about it. When you had to do something difficult, who was there to encourage you? Did they judge you when they noticed you were in trouble? Probably not, right? Similarly, the voice inside your head should be your biggest fan, not your harshest critic. Criticism can be good, but if you're constantly bashing yourself, it can fill you with fear and doubt, kill your motivation and inspiration. So, why not give yourself a break? Self-compassion means recognizing that you're in pain and taking the steps to relieve it. It requires self-acceptance, rather than striving to meet some unrealistic standard. Think about how negative talk makes you feel. Recognize that this voice isn't helping and doesn't reflect your abilities. So when you face difficulties, consider what a kind person might say. Use this approach to improve your self-storytelling. You can also relieve your imposter syndrome by discussing it with others. When you express your emotions, you feel better about yourself. Not only that, chatting about the syndrome can help normalize and manage it. So, the next time these feelings crop up, reach out to someone you trust. Remember, the imposter's voice is that of your fears, not your own. To overcome negative thoughts, consider the evidence. What's really going on? If you can't challenge your thoughts, recognize them as an imposter's voice. Even better, transform them into a silly voice and ignore them completely. Don't forget, you got this. And always remember to be kind to yourself. Idea number 5. Let me tell you a story about Matilda, who had a passion for the theater since she was a kid. When the opportunity to attend drama school came up, she jumped at it. But soon, she realized that her classmates were all super talented and she felt like she didn't belong. But with determination, she caught up and even landed the lead role in a show. But even then, she felt inferior and was constantly comparing herself to others. And as time went by, she couldn't handle the pressure anymore. Now, what went wrong for Matilda? Well, she was unaware that perfectionism is about overcoming feelings of inadequacy. It feeds on insecurities, which can lead to overwork or avoidance. Like any other habit, it promises to make you feel better. But the more you strive for perfection, the less you enjoy the task. So instead, you work even harder and try to achieve more. But here's the thing, nothing in life is perfect. So if you set your standards too high, you'll never meet them. Perfectionism is self-defeating and impossible to achieve. So, stop for a moment and consider why somebody might want to be perfect. Is it because we believe that perfectionists make better employees and parents? Perhaps we feel that those people who feel they're doing enough are lazy? Whatever the reason, it's time we move on from that kind of thinking. It makes it impossible to see clearly what's going on. Your imposter voice may tell you that dropping your perfectionism is crazy, but consider the cost to your health. The more of a perfectionist you are, the more psychological stress you have in return. Is it worth risking your health to pursue something that can't actually be achieved? Instead of trying to do everything perfectly, try focusing on a few key areas. Diligence is a much healthier path to success. Once you accept your limitations, you'll be able to enjoy your life. Idea number 6. Time is precious, right? So we gotta use it wisely. But let's face it, sometimes we try to cram way too much into a week and end up overworking ourselves. And that's not the way to live your life to the fullest. So, it's time to rethink that and start thinking about a more sustainable path. To start reclaiming your life, you need to reassess your situation and deal with overwork and avoidance. Only then can you start to enjoy life again. First things first. Make yourself a priority. Set boundaries, and try not to always favor the needs of others over your own. Take breaks, delegate. When you try to do everything yourself, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Be honest and open about your workload. Keep requests and commitments to a minimum, and don't be afraid to tell others if you think you have too much to do. And most importantly, practice saying no. And don't waste your time trying to do everything perfectly, either. Test this by submitting work when you think it's 80% perfect and see what others say about it. And ditch the idea that making time for yourself suggests laziness. You don't need to be productive 24/7. Taking some extra time for rest or pleasure may likely improve your performance. So put yourself first, you'll be surprised at how much better you feel afterward. When you let go of your need for perfection, everything improves. After all, learning to appreciate the good things that come your way is what life's about. Finding things to be thankful for is easier when you slow down. If you want to live your life fully, you have to make time to enjoy it. So go on, take a break, and give yourself the time you deserve. Summary. Combating imposter syndrome is all about getting cozy with the uncomfortable. I know, it can be tempting to stay in your comfort zone. But trust me, pushing yourself to try new things and embrace the unknown is where the magic happens. And the more you do it, the more resilient and self-assured you'll become. But watch out for those sneaky little signs of perfectionism, self-doubt, and overworking yourself. Give yourself a little check-in and see if you're making the changes you need to. And don't forget to keep adding to that list of accomplishments. When you start thinking of yourself as a success, it's a whole lot easier to believe you can do even better. Just make sure your goals aren't pulling you back into that imposter syndrome trap. If they are, remember what you're living for, reread your notes and apply your own personal cure. And above all, be kind to yourself. Remember, there's no such thing as perfection, so be patient and give yourself a chance to succeed and enjoy life. Now, the insights and knowledge I gained from reading The Imposter Cure were truly profound. I highly recommend it. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and if you found value in this video, please don't hesitate to give it a like and share it with your friends and loved ones.